It's October 1st, 2018, and it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count them down. Number 1, Republican senators ignore sexual assault survivor, vote to confirm her assaulter. Last week, the Republican members of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee confirmed what many of us knew already. When faced with a choice between believing a woman or believing a man, they'll go with the man every time. Even if the woman is calm, rational, credible, and telling a story that lines up with the known facts, and the man is rude, petulant, entitled, telling a story that contains multiple demonstrable falsehoods, and giving the impression that he definitely doesn't want any further investigation of this. Thursday's hearings had something to upset and outrage just about everyone with a conscience and a shred of empathy. There was the determined poise of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford holding her composure during her obviously difficult testimony, contrasted with the sometimes incoherent indignation of Brett Kavanaugh, the man Dr. Ford says attempted to rape her. There was the sight of the Republicans bringing in outside counsel Rachel Mitchell to question Dr. Ford on their behalf, then giving Mitchell the rest of the day off so they could grandstand and grovel in defense of Kavanaugh themselves. There was Kavanaugh, the man who previously touted his ability to be an impartial judge, angrily blaming the Democrats for the accusations against him. There was Lindsey Graham warning Democrats that they'd better watch out for their nominees from now on, as though never been credibly accused of sexually assaulting someone is such an unreasonable standard to which to hold nominees for high government office. There are too many more examples to list, really. For me, the most disgusting part of the hearing was the way Republican senators went out of their way to show superficial respect to Dr. Ford while simultaneously defending Kavanaugh and broadcasting how annoyed they were that they even had to talk about this. You could say this is a new low for the Republican Party, and in a sense, it is, of course. But in another way, these Republican senators are doing the same thing they've been doing for decades, making a virtue of their ability to say one thing while shamelessly doing another. Declare your respect for women and your concern about sexual assault, then turn around and demonstrate that you don't actually give a shit about either of those things. Oh yes, Dr. Ford, we have nothing but respect and sympathy for what you've gone through. We thank you so much for being with us today. Now please excuse us while we vote in favor of the man who assaulted you, who I think we can all agree is the real victim here. Last week's hearings should have made it clear to anyone who still had doubts. The Republican Party consists primarily of evil people and cowards who are too chicken shit to stand up to them. Hi, Senator Flake! Wow. In hindsight, the name really seems like a tip-off, doesn't it? Number 2, George W. Bush conducts behind-the-scenes push for Kavanaugh confirmation. One more bit about the Kavanaugh thing. It seems former President George W. Bush has been calling senators who are thought to be on the fence about confirming the Supreme Court nominee, including Republicans Jeff Flake, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski, and Democrat Joe Manchin, to try and persuade them to vote in Kavanaugh's favor. This isn't so surprising. Kavanaugh worked for Bush during his presidency, and Bush appointed him to his current post on the U.S. Court of Appeals. But can we please dispense with this dangerous and false notion that George W. Bush is one of the good ones? Set aside his clueless, warmongering shit show of a presidency for a moment and just look at the gulf that exists between his words and his actions these past couple of years. I know a lot of people, even some of us who are vehemently anti-Trump, who are horrified and angry about what's happening in the country, want to believe that civil, principled bipartisanship is possible and that Republicans like Bush are lights guiding us toward that, and I get that. Even for Democrats and progressives, it can be disillusioning to admit that the other party is utterly irredeemable in ways that go far beyond disagreements on policy and political philosophy. But that's where we are. I think it's time that we all come to grips with the fact that Republicans like Bush, who have expressed some reservations about the direction the party has taken under Trump, are mostly upset by Trump's boorishness and lack of discipline, not by anything that Trump and his supporters in the party actually want to do. Bush doesn't like Trump because Republicans who follow Trump's lead do their dirty work right out in the open in front of everyone, not behind their backs like in the good old days. It's not the dirty work itself that Bush has a problem with, it's the way they're going about it. He's like a magician who is angry at his fellow magicians for performing shitty sleight of hand while being completely indifferent to all the rape charges they've made to disappear. Number 3, Trump administration cites climate change to justify rolling back fuel efficiency standards. Last month, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, an agency of the U.S. government's executive branch, released a report which predicted that Earth's global temperature will increase by 7 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 4 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels by the end of this century. But the report didn't include this calamitous prediction to justify new measures to counter climate change. Instead, the prediction is used to support the Trump administration's efforts to rescind automobile fuel economy regulations. How does that make sense? It doesn't. But remember, this is the work of the Trump administration, which we don't expect to make sense. Which means that it does make sense? I want to stress that a rise of 7 degrees above pre-industrial levels by the end of this century is a big deal. Coral reefs will die. What are now coastal areas will be underwater. It'll potentially be catastrophic. Why does the NHTSA include this prediction to defend Trump's dismantling of anti-climate change measures? Because, according to the report, things are so bad that nothing we do is really going to make that much of a difference, so we might as well get off the car manufacturers' asses, right? The report concludes that avoiding the 7-degree rise in temperature would require reductions in worldwide carbon emissions so drastic that it's not even worth trying. The report also claims that reducing carbon emissions to levels low enough to avert this looming disaster would require changes that are not currently technologically or economically feasible. Because why would the United States want to be a leader in developing the technological and economic innovations necessary to combat this level of climate change when we could all just throw up our hands and say, fuck it, the clock's ticking, there's nothing we can do about it, so smoke if you got 'em. I know it seems short-sighted and irresponsible, and also suspiciously like Trump and the Republican Party are just grasping for an excuse to do a favor for their benefactors in the fossil fuel industry and pander to their voters in the Rust Belt, but come on, if our grandchildren are gonna drown anyway, shouldn't somebody at least make a buck in the meantime? Anyway, remember when landing people on the moon and bringing them home safely wasn't technologically feasible either? And remember how we overcame those technological obstacles so we could do it anyway? And we did that even though the fate of our planet wasn't at stake in that case? I'm just saying. Number 4, new study illustrates how YouTube empowers the far right. Here's something that is either a fact so self-evident that it hardly requires mentioning, or a piece of hateful propaganda concocted by the left in order to assassinate the characters of some innocent and upstanding classical liberal intellectuals, depending on how big of a dipshit you are. A recently published report by Rebecca Lewis for research firm Data and Society finds that YouTube hosts a network of influential personalities who promote people with right-wing ideologies ranging from more or less traditional conservatism to outright white supremacy. And moreover, that YouTube's algorithms help to amplify these influencers and the guests they feature. The report tracks 65 influencers operating across 81 channels and notes how even people whose personal political views don't seem too extreme, relatively speaking, have routinely given their platforms to people who do have extremist views. For example, spineless panderer Dave Rubin, who often invites racists, misogynists, and professional trolls on his show and allows them to say whatever they want while he mostly smiles and nods in agreement. This has the effect of normalizing people with some truly dangerous ideas. People who seek to legitimize scientific racism, who warn about white genocide or the threat posed by forced diversity, who stir up hatred against people of color, immigrants, women, and other groups, and who relentlessly stoke the fear and outrage of their aggrieved white male viewers. And as I said, to most people from outside those target audiences who have been paying attention, all of this is obvious already. What the Data and Society report also establishes is how YouTube itself enables this to happen by allowing content creators who traffic in demagoguery and conspiracy theories to benefit from the same strategies used by more benign mainstream creators, like beauty vloggers or video essayists. Why does YouTube allow this? Because YouTube doesn't give a shit about content. It monetizes popularity and influence, and only cares about who and what is being popularized and what viewers are being influenced to believe and do when it's forced to. Even with changes to terms of service and attempts to increase enforcement of community guidelines these last couple of years, extremists, including open misogynists and white supremacists, and people like Rubin who promote and defend the extremists, continue to thrive on this platform. That will only change if those of us who want it to change continue to talk about this problem here on YouTube and everywhere else, and demand that YouTube take responsibility for the fact that professional bigots and abusers use it to enrich themselves and disseminate their toxic, harmful rhetoric to the rest of the world. And speaking of people who built a brand by disseminating toxic, harmful rhetoric to the world, it's now time for the segment devoted to some of the other things Donald Trump has done recently to disgrace the presidency and embarrass and/or endanger the United States and the rest of the world. It's number 5, the further misadventures of Lord Dampnut. Please keep in mind, as always, the following is not a complete list. He released a video responding to Hurricane Florence where he said, "This is a tough hurricane, one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water." He told Geraldo Rivera during a radio interview that he is an absolute no on the question of Puerto Rico becoming a state because he doesn't like the mayor of San Juan, adding, Puerto Rico shouldn't be talking about statehood until they get some people that really know what they're doing. So by that standard, we should revoke the statehood of all the states who voted for Trump, I guess. I'd be fine with that. Goodbye, worst parts of my country. He held a press conference where he lied constantly, attacked the press, sought to undermine the credibility of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford and the other women who have accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct, got pissy with CNN's Jim Acosta when Acosta pointed out that Trump had only called on male reporters up to that point, and also that he had a history of always siding with men who have been accused of misconduct by women. Understated the number of women who have accused him of sexual misconduct. Trump said 4 or 5, when, according to Business Insider, it's more like 22. Told people they should ask Sean Hannity about it. Told a female reporter who was asking him about the allegations against him to sit down. Dodged a question about Rod Rosenstein by repeating his broken record insistence that there was no collusion, no obstruction. Demonstrated that he has no idea what the 25th Amendment is. Falsely claimed that Obama was about to go to war with North Korea, and referred to a Kurdish reporter who asked a question as Mr. Kurd. And last but certainly not least, he addressed the United Nations General Assembly, bragging, "In 2 years, we have accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country." That preposterous line of bullshit elicited laughter from the assembled international dignitaries, which is an appropriate response. Trump attempted to save face by claiming that he wanted to get a laugh on that line. So, when he says, "My presidency is the most accomplished in history," as he often does, he's joking? Does he even understand what he's saying? Does it even matter to the people who are still supporting him? Does it even matter to him? Does anything matter? Anyway, that's 5. Speak out, act out, resist, look after each other. Hey folks, hope you got something out of this one. If you did, please click like and share the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not subbed already. And also, please, please, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one and like all the videos I make on this channel by supporting this channel with a monthly donation through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron for as little as $1 a month. And believe me, those $1 a month pledges really, really help me out. But if you can afford it, and you think I'm worth it, and you pledge at $5 a month or more, you get yourself a shout out at the end of the Facepalm 5, just like these fine folks who are my newest $5 plus patrons. Joshua Elliott, thank you, Joshua. John Hibbler, thank you, John. Unholier Than Thou, thank you, Unholier Than Thou. Gregory A. Petro, thank you, Gregory. Lawrence Diamond, thank you, Lawrence. Nikki Harris, thank you, Nikki. Kira Leach, thank you, Kira. And Lee Chapman, thank you, Lee. Thanks to all of you for pledging. Thanks to all of you who are patrons at whatever level you're pledging. Thanks to all of you for watching, whether you're patrons or not. I appreciate all of your support in whatever form it takes, and I'll see you next time.